do believe we have the Secretary of State in the House here, Michael Watson. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am well, and your good buddy, our good buddy Perez, has got me in the King's chair up here. So
absolutely,
pretty fun.
Absolutely,
yeah, I like this.
All the bells and whistles, and you can play with them, but you have to leave a token of support there. So. don't break anything.
If something goes wrong, I'll start mashing buttons. So just let you know.
Then we're in trouble. Hey, this has nothing to do, and again, Michael Watson, Secretary of State, with the topic that we want to talk about. But I just you've been a lawyer for a long time.
Yes, sir.
I want you to hear this. You came through school and you know your history. I just have to have some help and input on this one because I'm having a hard time digesting this soundbite. Would you help me out? Here we go.
We still support the one China policy. We go there to acknowledge the status quo is what our policy is. There was nothing disruptive about that. It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world. Don't take it from me. That's from Freedom House. Courageous people, and it's just, I don't know why it is, except there's some commercial interests who would like to diminish the relationship.
Your analysis of that cut.
I'm now dumber for having listened to
that. And so is America. So in other words, what we've heard about China being suppressive is not true. It's one of the freest countries on planet Earth, and apparently they just had some bad PR from some corporations out there.
Absolutely amazing. And Paul, I went back in 2008 with the American, it was a group out of the State Department, American Youth Council, I believe it was. And basically the idea was, look, we want to expose young leaders to countries across the world. And we went to China. And one of the things that was really shocking to me is when we would ask questions about their monetary policy or about free trade or, any kind of question, they would absolutely shut off and would not answer the question, would say, we're not talking about that, move on to the next one. Anything that Americans may have had a problem with, they would not discuss. And you talk about one of the freest societies, good gracious.
Ask the Uyghurs on that one. The other thing, there was a couple of shots after, I think it was after lunch yesterday, when I was doing show prep, and I saw the people were kneeling in the streets because they had not gotten clearance from a number that they were supposed to have. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was just that you can't do this or that without having a certain number. And I don't know what it was, but it was in response to her statement about some of the things that are so suppressive going on in communist China.
Listen,
which was
there's nothing free about China.
Your 2 cents on what happened at Mar-a-Lago.
Unbelievable. And I think when you look at that, and Marshall Fisher, I caught a clip coming in that you had asked Marshall about, and Americans need to understand if it can happen to him, it can happen to any one of us. So that's the important thing to take away from this.
Well, and that's true, because we got some people who you go on the internet or you go on Twitter or one of the social platforms, and these people are making snide comments about, boy, you'll do anything to keep this criminal from going to jail, talking about Trump. And I thought, number one, regardless of what party it was, this is wrong. If somebody did this constantly to Barack Obama, and God forbid they do it a little bit later on to Joe Biden, which he probably deserves to be in jail, but it is wrong to do this and to weaponize the DOJ, the FBI, and who knows what the CIA is. But
definitely. And you look at it, Paul, in the process, and we don't know exactly what happened. I did see some background on the judge that signed off on the warrant, which brings into question, was it politically motivated by him? And I hate that we have to ask that question these days, and that's unfortunate that our judicial system gets to that level. But we always have to ask questions. I think that's an important piece of making sure we're holding folks accountable.
That guy's creepy. He's Judge Bruce Reinhardt. He was the one who authorized the raid and gave the go-ahead, so he must have thought everything was, on the up and up. But he's the same guy who was a representative. He just got promoted not long ago. He was the same guy who was the lawyer who was defending the convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. He had received immunity in the long-running sex trafficking investigation. He was, who else did he represented? Epstein's employees. He represented the pilot, the scheduler, Sarah Kellen, and also Nadia, who is it, Markakova, who was Epstein girl who once he reportedly called her his Yugoslavian sex slave. And this is the lawyer who defended them. But I have one cut here, and we have plenty of time to get to our topic, but I wanted you to hear this.
And this is the same Chuck Schumer who said back in 2016 when it was President-elect Trump that if you mess with the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. So that's how he views using the intelligence community, using the Justice Department to go after their political enemies. And we have seen it. First it was the Mueller investigation, then it was impeachment 1, then it was impeachment 2, and now it's January 6th committee, and none of that's working. So they go to this step where they raid a president's home. Remember this, we've had 14 FBI agents come to our office over the last several months as whistleblowers. So there are still some good people there who are so fed up with the political nature of the Justice Department, they're coming to us while we're in the minority. We can't do we can't subpoena any documents. All we can do is tell their story, which we've been trying to do. But that's how bad this has gotten. And why, again, I'll emphasize, why don't Chris Wray and Merrick Garland come in front of us this Friday and answer our questions? If this is so important to go after President Trump this unprecedented way, come and answer our questions in the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives.
Well, it's not going to happen. Number one, when Christopher Wray finished his Senate testimony earlier this week, he bolted and took off on vacation. So I don't even know if you could find him. I'm convinced, Michael, that Jim Jordan has cornflakes and Red Bull in the morning for his morning cereal, man. That guy's always charging out. Today, you and others, well, I'm reading the clip here, the official statement, 14 other secretaries of state push back on the Biden administration's continued gross federal overreach, a jointly signed letter. Tell me a little bit about this, and where is the overreach?
Well, you mentioned weaponization of the different branches of government. This is an overreach, an incredible overreach of the federal government, obviously the executive branch. And basically what it does is direct federal agencies to get into the voter registration business, to get into voter assistance, like helping people fill out absentee ballot requests and sharing election information, which is fine. I don't mind sharing information. But the key piece here is, and you look at the policy statement that the executive order included, it is the responsibility of the federal government to expand access to voter registration. And people say, well, Michael, what's wrong with expanding access to voter registration? I'm okay with expanding access to voter registration, but it's not the federal government's job. If you look at the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, the Elections Clause, if you look at the NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, it established a baseline, and this is Congress, established a baseline for voter registration services, leaving registration strategies and program design to the states. So this is a job for the states. Now, if we ask a federal entity, a federal agency to help us, that's fine. We can do that at the state level. But it's not the federal government's job. It's not President Biden's job to expand voter registration access through federal agencies. And here's where it goes, Paul. I want people to be very clear on this. The roadmap was set out with Zuckerbuck dollars. And well, Michael, how do you tie that together? So there's a piece in here that says third-party entities that are hired by the executive branch, and let's remember who's in charge there. Susan Rice would be making these decisions of these third-party groups that are coming in to run these voter registration drives. They can locate in places that, we may think like public housing agencies, job centers, any kind of federal property, federal agency. These folks can come in there. And think about it, Paul, if you're choosing who's going to do these voter registration drives, if you're assigning where they go, remember what happened with the Zuckerbuck's dollars. There have been many studies that have shown, Wisconsin was one of the clearest ones, where they used the majority big dollar amounts in areas where they knew there was a certain Democratic lean to the voter population in those areas, and that's where the more money went. Well, think about this. When you're sending a third-party group that you hire, that you specifically picked, where are you going to send them to go register voters, where it's going to help you? Again, a weaponization of this, and so that's kind of just the 40,000-foot view of really what we saw happening, and it's not their job.
What people don't understand is, with the advent of social media and the internet and everything, all the data that we're compiling, gazillions of amounts on a second basis, they can target this thing in. We probably in the old days were using shotguns. Now we're using the highest powered lasers possible. So like you said, they can get down to that zip code, to that neighborhood, probably that fruit stand if they wanted to. So we'll talk more about this and also what is the Secretary of State's advice on what we can do at the and of course vote. We understand that, but how else can you get involved? And I just think the Republicans and conservatives and Americans across this country, we've got to do everything we can to stop any cheating at the polls coming up in midterms. We'll talk about that.
That's right.
When we return, Joey Deason joins us 8:05. We'll talk Amazon and their new facility coming up. Boy, there are so many rumors out there about this raid. Monica Crowley tweeted yesterday, the plot thickens. Was the FBI searching for documents that incriminate the FBI, and the Russia hoax? And some people think that they may have left something behind. Lawyers were not allowed to watch as they went through. And we also heard, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, but they went through the clothing, the wardrobe of the former First Lady. Which, that's getting a little depraved, is it not?
And who knows what's true. But I also saw somewhere where they turned off the security cameras so that it wasn't recorded when they were in there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But anyway, so let's put a recap on this. And I think one of the words of wisdom on here, those who can have the right to expand it also have the right to retract it. And I guess that's the thing that worries you.
That's exactly right.
All right, so where is this now? What needs to be done to stop it?
So obviously the states have the authority here and the legal authority to do voter registration. And I want to remind Mississippians that we currently have partnerships with the Department of Health, Medicaid, DHS, Department of Mental Health, Department of Rehab Services, DPS, the list goes on. We do voter registration drives, public events all the time, college football games, high school football games, college campuses. We've got several scheduled this fall. I know the first year we registered over 100,000 new voters here in Mississippi, so we've got a great handle on voter registration here. We do not need the executive branch overreach coming into Mississippi telling us what to do and how to do, because we already know how to do this. And again, he doesn't have the authority. It's just weaponization. And I talked to you about what we can see coming from this. And by the way, speaking of weaponization, my buddy Jared Porter reminded me just to remind Mississippi listeners about our velvet deer season that's coming up. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's
no. It's way off topic.
But it's a big deal.
How do you get Secretary of State in velvet season?
Well, weaponization was on my mind. A buddy of mine, Taylor Sledge, actually came and we were visiting about some other issues with the Secretary of State's office, and he said, "Hey, have you ever looked at these other states that have done this?" Anyway, so I was
listening to Ricky Matthews on the program on Monday on noon. And it's with bow only. Some have bow and guns.
That's right.
Is it 3 days?
Private lands, September 16th through the 18th.
Through the 18th.
It's coming up. When you scouting that monster, you have a better
I think
shot.
a lot of people, and they said it on this one, and when they've done this in other states, the first year is like gang ho. And then the second year, people says, I don't know, it's too damn hot. I'm not getting out there. But have a chance to do this and get a trophy that we weren't allowed to take in years past.
That's right, and a lot of states don't have this, so we were going to get some tourism boost to that, and hunting and fishing is a huge draw here in Mississippi.
All right, so anything else on this one that we need to know?
Not really on that one, Paul. We're going to keep it close, obviously monitoring it and pushing back against the weaponization again of voter registration, something that the executive branch has no business doing. So when you watch people like Susan Rice trying to get their fingers into this, and you know that's probably not a good idea, especially seeing what has all happened. And by the way, the Zuckerbucks deal, they have re-engineered their approach. So we'll talk about that on another show, but they're still trying to figure out how to play a role with private dollars coming into elections process. But I will say this, Paul, very pleased with several pieces of legislation that came out this year that helps Mississippi have more integrity in the voting process here. And again, we've talked about that from day one while we've been in office, and we've got our citizenship piece through this year, making sure that only United States citizens are voting in our elections. We're moving to new machines with paper verifiable trails, which is very important. If you've got a question about the machine, let's go look at the paper ballots. And
how many of those are we talking about? And where?
Over half of our voting population is already on these new machines. But by 2024, all the counties have to be moved over to these new machines. So that's a process that's happening.
Are they plugged into, or is any of that data transmitted digitally over the internet?
Here's the important piece. In this legislation, it says they are incapable of connecting to the internet. So that's a great thing. And, we only had 2 counties that actually had that capability going into this, but now none of the counties will have that ability to connect those machines to the internet. They did not. The key piece there is the 2 counties that had it was basically transferring information back to Election Central, and it wasn't sending them up to the state.
But you still do that. I mean, you have the unofficial total or the official total is transmitted via internet somewhere down there, correspondence, but that has no bearings on the actual numbers, does it?
That's correct. And they are uploaded into SIMS, the statewide election management system. That's encrypted, very, very safe.
One more thing on this one. We understand what the objective is. The number one enemy is voter ID, and they don't know how to solve this problem, because when they start going to the people who are the most affected, they don't mind, and they think the African Americans or their base. And when you say this, the African Americans and their base on other people in that base, what was it, like 70 or 80% of them, anywhere from 65 to 75%, said they think voter ID is a good deal. So they don't want to bring that up.
The vast majority of Americans think voter ID is a good idea.
Isn't it amazing how these people, these bad apples, keep popping up like Susan Rice?
It is.
I mean, you would think she would retire sooner or later.
It's whack-a-mole.
One more thing here that is just most disturbing. A source close to the former president expressed concern that FBI agents or DOJ lawyers conducting the search could have planted stuff, but that's not it. Hang on, that's not what I was... Oh, here it is. To make matters worse, if that's possible, going back to the FBI raid and not deer season, we learned yesterday on Tuesday, FBI agents approached Republican Representative Congressman Scott Perry. They stopped Scott Perry, handed him a warrant, confiscated his personal cell phone. This comes one day after the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. And here's a statement from Congressman Perry, who is an ardent supporter of Donald Trump.
And a general.
He said, I'm sorry?
And a general. I think he was a former general.
He was in the military.
Correct.
I got you. He said, this morning while traveling with my family, 3 FBI agents visited me and seized my cell phone. They made no attempt to contact my lawyer, who would have made arrangements for them to have my phone if that was their wish. I'm outraged, though not surprised, that the FBI, under the direction of Merrick Garland, DOJ, would seize the phone of a sitting member of Congress. My phone contains info about my legislative and political activities and personal private discussions with my wife, family, constituents, and friends. None of this is government's business. But they stopped this congressman. This on the heels of Mar-a-Lago, former president, and the number one opponent, and this also on the heels earlier of them putting 87,000 new IRS agents on the streets. If that's not enough to tweak the any honest election coming up in November, I have no idea.
There's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
You start with the IRS. By the way, remember the IRS was weaponized as well. But how about we spend that money on Border Patrol agents?
Or new police officers across the country. Would be a good idea. Final thoughts, sir.
Look, I'm excited about Mississippi, our future. We talked about elections yesterday. We had 56 high school seniors in starting our ambassador program, where we're teaching them about the voting process here in Mississippi, about how state government works, about opportunities they can have to stay in Mississippi. Those are the type efforts when we're going out and we're registering voters, when we're educating Mississippians on the process. Those are the things that we think are very important, because when you know it, when you're familiar with it, you're less afraid to get involved. And so we want to make sure they're aware of the facts. Why is it necessary to have secure elections in Mississippi? We're really excited about that, and again, having a chance to mentor those future leaders is important to us.
Do believe that coming up also in the midterms, we'll have, I had it here somewhere, I thought I still had it, maybe not, 81 of 82 counties where they're having school board elections that'll be on the ballot.
It's going to be a busy fall.
It is most important for you folks to get involved in your school board and become an active member to know exactly who the school board member is and whatever you need to know about him or her. So there you go.
You're right, Paul. And too many times we get focused on these federal elections and we forget those local elections are the ones that can impact your daily lives much quicker than federal. And especially the school board. They can increase your taxes. And,
absolutely.
And the board has to increase the rate. So be prepared and know who you're voting for.
This is the 10th day of August. Any deadlines here as far as registration, all of that? Is that something you want to mention?
So voter registration is 30 days out, so that'll be in October. We've got plenty of time for that. Absentee voting starts 45 days out, so we're still got some time to think about.
Oh, you'll be back. By then you'll even have that velvet buck.
Oh, come on. Here we go.
Michael Watson, thank you.